Hey, Lindsay, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
We're super glad that you're here to share an incredible story of debt freedom that we know the audience can't wait to hear all about. But before we get into your journey, can you just take a moment to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know what you're all about?
Absolutely. So I'm Lindsay. I live up in northern Indiana. I'm a packaging engineer for a medical device company. But before that, I worked in other aspects of the medical industry. I've gotten to do some really neat, kind of really cool stuff. And outside that, I have a dog and a horse, and that's pretty much my world.
Nice. So there was a time where you were deep in debt. You had a bunch of it. So tell our audience about how much debt you had, the type of debt it was, and how long it took you to get rid of it.
Absolutely. So I had in total about $77,000. I paid off a little bit over that. About 2,500 of it was some medical debt that I needed to clear up from when I wasn't able to pay when I was in college. And then about 5,500 of it was a car loan that I had, and the rest of it was student loans. So there was about $68,000 of student loans in there. So obviously I got that from going to school.
Now, for most people, you didn't name anything that's not out of the norm. Plenty of people have medical debt, and plenty of people have student loans and what have you. So there was something there, though, that made you say, yes, this is the norm. Yes, this is what everybody else is doing, but this is not what I want to do. I don't want to live my life buried in debt. What was it that opened your eyes to even make you think that getting out of debt was even a possibility?
So it was kind of twofold. My sister and brother-in-law somehow had come across the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, and they started that program, and I got to watch them kind of start walking through that process. And then they shared the book with me, and when I read it, it was just like, this is it. This is a plan. This is concrete, steps that I can take. It's not a theory, because sometimes it feels like when people talk about money, it's maybe if I made $100,000 a year, it would work, but I don't make that, so I can't do this. And it was having that plan right there. And I'd always been pretty, I guess, credit averse, maybe not credit averse, but debt averse. I didn't really like the idea of it. I got a credit card when I turned 18, but I hated using it. So it pretty much just sat there because I didn't like the idea of debt. And I'm sure that just comes from my security gland and just who I am as a person. But I didn't like it to begin with. So having those student loans and watching them kind of pile up was a little scary for me. And then seeing a plan where I was like, oh my gosh, I can get out of debt. Like, it's perfectly reasonable to not have debt in this world. And it was just that moment, it just flipped the switch for me.
Awesome. Now, what was your reaction when your brother and sister first started out on this journey of their debt freedom? And thus, what has people's reaction been to you when you decided that you were going to take that plan and you were going to apply it to your life? I'm curious about those two responses.
Okay, yeah. So for them, I didn't really have any opinions on it because I guess I hadn't really lived real life yet. I was still in school with all of my debt. I know they had a lot of people who had opinions about what they were doing. They were insane. It was, whatever. Like, that's a nice idea. For me, most of the people around me were pretty supportive. I had coworkers and friends who were like, we don't get it. Like, we don't understand why you don't want a car payment or things like that. But they were very supportive. And then you had a few kind of outliers. Mostly to me, it was more patronizing than telling me I was wrong. It's like, oh, well, when you get to the real world, you'll find out that you have to have a car payment. And I don't know when I'm going to join the real world, but I'm really enjoying my paid off car. So
that's awesome. This is the new real world. The real world that they're talking about is a real world full of debt payments and stress and avoiding phone calls and avoiding getting letters out of the mail. Like, that's not the real world that we want to be a part in. And that's not the real world that everybody tuned in wants to be a part of either. Talk about this now. When you buckled down and said, okay, I saw my brother and sister do it, I know this can be done. That's one thing. But to see, take out a calculator and get a total amount of debt that you're in, I mean, that had to be, like you said, a little bit jarring as you saw the number accumulate. So talk about the mentality, the mindset that you had to put yourself in to know that on one hand, like, I know debt freedom is real. I just saw my brother and sister do it, but I owe a lot of money. Talk about the mindset to even just push forward and say, no matter what, I'm going to get this done.
So the mindset is really, you have to know why you're doing it. So there's got to be a bigger reason than just, I want to get out of debt. If it's just kind of like I want to get out of debt sort of thing, I don't think that's necessarily enough motivation to kind of climb that mountain. So for me, that motivation was being able to give very, very, very a lot of money. I want to be able to do that. Growing up, had a lot of people who invested in me. Not just financially, but they gave their time, they gave resources, and they really didn't have to do it. And to this day, I still don't understand why they did it. They're just those types of people. And I knew that if I didn't have this debt, if I didn't have these student loans weighing over my head, that I could take the time to, give a little girl riding lessons for free because she wanted to learn how to do that, but didn't have the money. Or I could give really, I could give a lot to some people who really needed it, through church or something like that. Like I could do that I might not be able to if I had to spend $400 on a car payment that month. And I think that was the mentality, was having that purpose that was bigger than just the plan in front of me. And I know for some people it's, I don't have children yet, but obviously when I do have children, I want to leave them a legacy. I want to leave them a beautiful life, that they can see and that they can have this freedom and security. And I just knew that wasn't something that was going to be possible if I lived the standard way and kept myself in debt. Absolutely.
Now, you talked at the beginning how the thing that kind of fueled you was the fact that this was a plan. Like this was something that could be done. So let's talk about the practical side of your journey to debt freedom. Fill our audience in on some of the things that you did in order to make your debt freedom a reality.
I think the biggest thing was obviously the budget. You've got to write it down. Definitely writing it down. And it's not just like, oh, I think I'd like to spend $200 on groceries and that's it. You got to track it. You have to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, because me in particular, I will nickel and dime myself to death, death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing, where, oh, it's just $5 here or it's just $10 there. And then at the end of the month, you've spent $500 and you're like, what, how did I spend that much? So writing it down is the biggest practical tip that I could give anybody, and revisiting it over and over again. There were times where, you have like, I always use internet bills and like cable and stuff like that. If you call every couple months, maybe your company will say like, oh, we can't do any better, I'm sorry. You call 2 months later and magically there's some sort of deal that can even lower your bills. Same thing with insurance, making sure you're getting a really good deal on that, shopping around. And I think learning how to be content with what you have. When you stop chasing the Joneses, you stop chasing the neighbors and like, oh, they got a really neat new car, or she got a really cool new purse or something like that. Yes, that's lovely. But at the same time, do you need it? What do you want more? Do you want the security more? Or do you want that item more? And there's nothing wrong with stuff. I'm a stuffaholic. I like it, but I wanted the freedom more. And so practically, kind of being content and learning where to be content was another big thing for me. And honestly, now I've become a little bit more of a minimalist. I would rather save up, get a really, really good deal on a high quality item and buy that and then have it for 10 years or 20 years than have several of a lesser quality, item. So I think that's really been a big thing as far as practicality goes.
Nice. So along this journey that you went on, an incredible journey, were there some obstacles that arose? And if so, how are you able to jump over those obstacles, not give up, and keep moving?
Absolutely. Yeah. I got hit a couple times by my Murphy's Law. So during that time, I had some pretty chronic health problems that I was dealing with. And obviously, when you're run down and you don't feel well and things like that, it's hard to keep going and stay motivated in other areas of your life. So I was dealing with that. I unfortunately went through a divorce early on in the process. So that's, of course, very mentally taxing. And thankfully for me, it was not financially taxing, but it's still a shakeup. Still something you have to work through. And then, I totaled a car. I got run off the road in our lovely icy Indiana winters, and my car was no more. And so I had to, buy a new one. Luckily, my vehicle at that point was paid off. So when I went to go buy a new one, I could pay cash for it. That was a really fun experience, paying cash for a nicer car. It's not a $2,000 beater. It was a nice car. That was a fun experience because they look at you like you have three heads when you walk into a dealership. So yeah, I mean, those were pretty much the biggest obstacles. And then, of course, you get those occasional naysayers or people who will just try to kind of put that in your ear like, no, that's not how it works. You're not going to win. You're not going to get there. Of course, then you just want to punch them in the face like, yes, I am. Leave me alone.
So let's talk about naysayers, because when people go out on this journey like you did, they're going to face naysayers just like you did. So when you were up against it, when people were talking in your ear, they were negative, they were opposing your newly acquired views on money, how did you fight through that? How did you not give in to what the norm is in their mindsets?
So first, I would try to kind of explain the why of what I was doing about, well, if I do this, then I can get to this point where I have my savings, and then I can get here where I've got, college savings for future kids, and I can pay off my mortgage early and things like that. When they were not, or in the case that they were not receptive to that and they just wouldn't stop, my favorite line became, well, rent's due on the 1st. And they'd kind of look at me and I'd be like, well, I figure if you're going to tell me how to handle my money, you're going to pay my bills too, right? And that usually shut them up. It's you try not to be too snarky, but sometimes it's just like, look, guys, you're going to handle your money your way. I'm going to handle my money my way. It's personal finance, but, please respect me and the way that I've chosen to do things. There are a lot of people walking this journey. It's not just me, with some crazy wild idea. There are a lot of folks out there who are supporting this, and I know it works because I've seen it work.
Does your credit score have you down and looking for solutions? You may just find the answers you're looking for with Credit Sesame. Credit Sesame is your solution for a free no-hassle credit score, credit analysis, and tips for managing your money. They are here to help you take control of and have the tools you need to bring about a bright financial future. Get empowered today. There's no credit card required. Receive identity theft protection up to $50,000. And discover a marketplace for credit and loan officers that will help you get to your next level. Visit hisandhermoney.com/Credit Sesame for more details.
Let's talk about motivation. A lot of people are motivated in the beginning. They get fired up to go on the journey, but somewhere along the way, things get tough, things get tight, things get uncomfortable, and they feel less than motivated. What do you think they should do, or what are some tips that you can give them for hanging on to that motivation so that they too can become debt free?
First, make little goals. So when you kind of, look at the big goal, it can be very, very daunting, especially when you have a large loan it's not 20 credit cards that you're paying off. It's a $22,000 car. So set kind of little goals like, okay, every $5,000 we pay off, you know what? We're going to go out to dinner. We're going to, do something to just say good job. It'll be reasonable, but good job. And then the bigger dream, it kind of goes back to that writing it down. If it helps, I wish I would have brought it so I could show you, but I had a chart that I got to fill in colors for every certain amount that I paid off. And that was really motivating for me when I would be like, oh, I ticked over the next one. I can fill that in. I've seen some people where they make like the construction paper chains. And so every $100 that they pay off or something, they get to cut it. And so they can watch that chain get smaller. Any way to see the progress is my suggestion. Whatever it takes, figure out how you are going to want to see your progress. For some people, that's seeing their net worth move back towards positive. That's always a nice thing where it's like, okay, we paid off debt and our net worth is going, the correct direction now. We're not going further into debt. We're actually owning more of our stuff. But finding that thing, that way, something that's going to motivate you. This summer, I'm taking my first vacation in 4 years. And it's going to be a real vacation where I really go somewhere I want to go. It's not going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll go down to Muncie, Indiana or something. Like none of that. Like a real vacation to Mexico or Florida or somewhere nice that's not Indiana. Not Indiana.
I love it. I love it. Well, you know what? You paid the price. You worked hard and you did what you had to do. And now you're debt free. Do us a favor. Talk us through the moment where you were able to make that very last debt payment. Paint the picture for us.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Sitting on the couch. I mean, it's just me and the dog. We're just hanging out. I actually had the day off work. So I'm, hanging out at home and I'm getting ready to schedule that last payment. And the last payment was a big one. It was probably $2,500. I don't remember exactly, but it was a big one. And I'm sitting there and I'm moving the money all around, putting it in the checking account out of my savings account. So it's just sitting right there and you're hitting that button and it's like, I'm done. I made it. I am done. I am finished. There is no more. I'm not going to get another bill. And in the moment it was exciting, but it really wasn't until my next paycheck hit that it hit me. Oh my gosh, this money is mine. I don't have to send my money anywhere. It's my money now. Because I was living at that point in time, I was living on about 20% of my income, a large portion of my income. Now, I had some help in doing that. I was living kind of in a rent exchange program a little bit with my parents at the time, but I had the money. And it was mine. And that was really that just like, you want to scream and dance and cry and carry on when you realize that no one else's name is on it. When it says your name on the paycheck, it's really yours this time.
Yeah, it's such an amazing feeling. You're able to look back at all that you went through, the sacrifices, the ups and the downs, and to have that moment of victory is something very, very special. So what's the goal now? Now that you're debt free, you've done it. Now, what's next? What do you plan on doing now? What's the next big challenge?
So right now, so far, I have finished my fully funded emergency fund. That was another big milestone for me. And now I'm saving for a house or saving for a down payment for a house. That's the next big savings goal, is to purchase a house with a little bit of land and whatnot.
Awesome. Looking back over the whole journey from start to finish, what do you think was the biggest life lesson that you took away from it all?
That I don't need stuff, and stuff is not going to make me happy. There is nothing about a new coat or anything, physically that's going to make me happy. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. There's nothing wrong with buying a leather couch or something like that, or a big screen TV or any of those things. There's nothing wrong with it, but they're not going to make me happy. None of that. I can enjoy it, but at the end of the day, it's me and my relationships and the work that I'm doing and where I'm putting myself and the situation I'm creating for my future. That's what's going to do it. That's what's going to make me happy. It's not going to be stuff.
Incredible. Now, we love to tell people, if you want to get motivated and stay motivated on your journey, you should fill yourself with content that's going to propel you forward along the way. So do you have any recommendations for any reading materials that people should check out if they want to learn more about getting their finances in order and staying motivated?
Yeah. So first, obviously, books by Dave Ramsey, Rachel Cruz, like that whole Ramsey personality group. They're very dialed in to helping you move towards your goals. And then outside of that, books by John Acuff are really, really good. He's more career oriented, but I really feel like if you are happy in what you're doing in your career, it's going to be so much easier to stay motivated and go and do those things. And then let's see, what else? Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Lapin was very, very good. Anything that you find interesting. A lot of my reading tends to be nonfiction outside of the financial world, but it's kind of fun when you're learning, even if it's not about finances. I think it goes back to that contentment aspect. Like, I can go get a book from the library and have a great time reading and learning and doing all of this, and I'm not out spending money.
Yeah, I love a good book. I love John Acuff as well. I read Do Over and I read Start by John Acuff, and both were very, 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 very motivating. So those are some good recommendations. Now, if there's somebody that heard your story and loved it and is like, man, Lindsay did it, that's incredible, that's great for her, but then they look at their situation and they say, but I've got this going on, I've got that going on, I'm not sure if I can do what Lindsay did. What words of encouragement would you offer to that person?
You can. I know that's not enough, but I'm telling you right here, I've been where you are. I've been in that place, even having watched, my sister and brother-in-law do this. Okay, that's great, but both of them were working. Both of them had really good jobs. How am I gonna, how am I gonna do this? I've been where you are, but give it a chance. If it doesn't work, you can stop doing it. But if you give it 90 days and you give it your all for 90 days or 6 months or something like that, you're going to start seeing those wins and you're not going to want to stop. You're not going to want to. So really just try it. Just try it. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work and you go back to whatever it is you're doing. But chances are, the reason you're frustrated is because whatever it is you're doing isn't working. So try something new, just commit to it for, 30, 90, 180 days. And I guarantee you're going to see a difference when you follow a plan. And not only that, obviously you guys do a great job telling stories or letting people like me tell our stories. And I bet if they go through like your YouTube videos or the audio of the podcast, they'll find someone that they can really connect with and that they can really, understand their story. Maybe a single mom might not really connect with my story. I may connect more with a student, but I bet you somewhere out there is a single mom that you guys have told her story, or a single dad, or a widow, or someone who's older and starting, not young, starting later in life. Find it. It's out there. People are telling these stories. Go find those stories and find what's inspirational so that you can have your story told and be more inspirational to others.
Can't say it any better than that. Lindsay, this has been incredible. We're so appreciative that you took time to share your story with everybody that's tuned in. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a really great time.